who is working. We've got apologies from Councillor Pearce and Councillor Duncan Wood. Councillor Wood was taken into hospital last Friday with an operation. It's okay, stones or something like that. He's now recovering at home, and I feel sure the whole meeting will wish him well for his recovery. So if you are watching, which is very disappointing if you are, Councillor Wood, get well soon. I need you. So we've got the minutes of the 5th of March of 2024. So you agree that I sign those as a true record? Good. I move it. Can I have a seconder, please? All those in favour? Good. Okay. Please declare any declarations of interest. There are no part 2 items. There are no questions from the members of the public. That's item 5. So I'll go straight into item 6, which is the overview of the general fund revenue budget for quarter 3. Here there are 5, one recommendation with 5 points. And so, Dave, if you can talk to the paper, please.
Thank you, Chair. This is the 3rd quarter budget monitoring being presented to you, and very similar story to the previous 2 quarters. We have a number of areas of income that are troubling, and we're not going to deliver the targeted income budget for the financial year. We've been through them each quarter, and the pay award obviously was higher than we budgeted for. That has been offset somewhat by the decision around VAT on leisure and an improved net interest position as a result of higher interest rates. Interestingly, the local authority, interestingly to me, the local authority lending borrowing regime has really peaked, and at one point local authorities were willing to pay over 8% for money in recent days. Unfortunately, we didn't have any available. The one key change in this quarter is that a number of the projects that have been run by services are likely to run over into the next financial year. So we're actually showing a position where our services are predicted to underspend by £2.9 million, which is really significant. But it does relate to the fact that in the vast majority of cases, it's projects that are going to be paid out in the new year. So you'll be getting requests for supplementary budgets, and I'll just give you a few. The Livable Exeter programme, which is funded by central government grant. The local plan, which is approved, there'll be funding going forward for that. The demolition of the bus station, you will see it's happened, but it mainly happened in April. So we'll pay the vast majority of that in the new financial year. And members approved a budget to negotiate an agreement with a couple of secured tenancies at Mary Archer's, and those negotiations, whilst in one case they're agreed but not yet signed off and paid. So again, significant budgets to be carried forward. So expect in the outturn report that you'll receive in July some quite significant requests for budgets to be carried forward. So all in all, generally a stable position. We knew about the income challenges early on in the financial position. Just to say, there are requests for 3 supplementary budgets. 2 of them are reductions in the budget for elements that are funded by earmark reserve, and they'll be carried forward into the next financial year. The 3rd one is depreciation budgets, which don't actually impact on the taxpayer. They come out below the line. So it's just there for your information, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, David. Leaders? Councillor Mitchell.
First of all, can I thank David for this comprehensive report, because I particularly find Appendix 4 more helpful. I wish I'd read that first of all before I ploughed through all the other pages first, which is the highlights and your coloured scorecard, so I could follow which ones I was going into. Not rather than detailed specifics, I just like a general phraseology you use that comes in throughout the report, and I just wanted to ask non-accountants and non-specialists what it means. You talk in the parking services of 700,000 income budget realignment. You talk in the waste charges service of 400,000 realignment of this income, and I'm just wondering, to us as lay people, what does that? Does that mean additional income? Is it service or making cuts next year? How does that balance? What does that mean in relation to balancing? And in relation to borrowing, I didn't believe we were currently considering borrowing because of high interest costs. So why we got an item in there about borrowing, having to consider borrowing if we've got none planned, or is this a carrying forward of existing borrowing from a previous time that now needs to be recapitalised?
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Okay, can I have any contribution? Oh, sorry, Councillor Moore.
Thank you. I apologise for being late. Thank you very much for the report. I've just got a couple of a question about the risk scores in the end. The issues are again around the lack of generation of commercial income. So I wanted to know what yourself or the executive are thinking about in terms of addressing those ongoing issues in relation to income generation. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I have any contributions from members? Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, great report, Dave, and I think the traffic light system in Appendix 4 is extremely useful. I think I can clarify the one about trade waste and what this realignment means. It means that the target that has been set, the historic one, was completely unrealistic. And in order to support the service, we needed to set a more realistic target. And it certainly helped in terms of achieving better income. And I think we're up to about £1 million at the moment, Dave, aren't we? So we're doing really, really well. And so it's improved the ability of the service to increase its trade income. So it's actually just reflect the reality of the situation. So although we're on a red here, it's more to do with all this historic setting of targets, and that's why it's been realigned to actually set a challenging target, but a realistic challenging target. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, anybody else? No. So Dave, if you can briefly just explain, is it along the lines that Councillor Williams said about realignment and to assure us that we're not going to be borrowing at a high rate of pay, and also about any quick views about commercial income and what we may or may not be doing about that.
Thank you, Chair. So in terms of the realignment of the budget, Councillor Williams is absolutely right. So in the 24-25 budgets, we have reduced the budget, income budget for trade waste and for car parks to reflect the reality of where we are. As Councillor Williams says, it's still a challenging target, so we haven't reduced it by the entire 600,000 shortfall, but it's more closely addressing the reality of where we are, similar with car park income. And the other significant budget that we've reduced is the housing benefit overpayment income that we receive, and that's to reflect the fact that with real-time information from DWP, it naturally reduces the amount of overpayments you make and that you can recover. So that has also been realigned. In terms of the borrowing, members will recall that we had a significant capital programme based on the condition surveys of all our assets. When interest rates started rising and rising very quickly, a proposal was put to members to reduce that down to deliver the significant and important areas of the capital programme, but to scale back from the complete works that were planned under the condition survey. Now, the element that was still left was fairly significant and did require borrowing, and that kept in the capital programme. But as you will see from the next report, the capital programme is proving challenging to deliver, and therefore we haven't had to physically borrow. When interest rates were low, we would probably have gone out and physically borrowed the money. At the moment, we're using a process of using our own existing funds to finance that. Even though it shows us borrowing, we don't have to pay the interest on that. And in terms of commercial income, then I'm sure that's something that we'll be looking at over the next year as we look to the 25-26 budget and trying to balance that.
Thank you. And indeed, as we do look forward to that, and I will read with great interest leaflets and stuff that gets put in the world of X and everywhere else, exactly how we're going to maintain the reserves at 3.4 million, find 5.6 over the future years, and find 3.8 million next year. I'm really waiting to see what everybody else is planning to do that. I know what they want, but nobody's given me any thoughts on that at the moment. So those are the recommendations before us. Can I have a seconder, please, as I move them? Sorry, done. All those in favour, please show.
It's unanimous, Chair. That has been carried.
Thank you. We move on now to item 7, which is the General Fund Capital Monitoring Statement for the third quarter. And again, David.
Thank you, Chair. This is the report at quarter 3 for the capital programme. Just to start, I'd like to remind members that after we carried forward the schemes from last year, so in July 2023, members approved at Council a General Fund Capital Programme of £72 million. As at the end of December, we had spent 3.45 million of that, which gives you a real indication as to the challenges we're having in delivering the capital programme. Indeed, the total forecast spend for the financial year is 8.6 million, and as we sit 9 days beyond the end of the financial year, I imagine even the 8.6 million is potentially a stretch. So we'll have a significant capital programme being carried forward into the new financial year, some of which you've already approved at the end of in the budget in February, and the rest will come for your consideration in June, July time. On the other side, we're also having challenges delivering capital receipts. So we've only delivered £20,000 worth of general fund capital receipts in the financial year. So everything in the world of capital is extremely difficult at the moment. Members will see the schemes that have been deferred into the new financial year, and a couple of schemes, the BLRF schemes, which are not now proceeding, where we will be we have handed the money back to the One Public Estate. The other thing I'd like to draw your attention to is section 8.6. So we're coming to council seeking further funding requests. Whilst we're seeking them in this financial year, they will actually roll forward into the new financial year to be delivered in the main. Firstly, DEFRA grant has been given to us via the University of Exeter Safer Streets 4, Environment Agency funding for Bromans for farm playing fields remediation works, correcting the proportion of the Shared Prosperity Fund for capital, additional £50,000 as was announced in council in February for the Corn Exchange lift that will be funded from revenue, and £48,800 to improve the AV equipment at the Civic Centre for hybrid meetings, and that will be funded from the Transformation Reserve. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, David. Leaders? Councillor Moore.
Thank you very much. I'm intrigued by the AV budget for equipment, which it sounds like a good thing to do. Will it enable better transmission of meetings to the general public, as well as use for internal meetings too?
Thank you. Any other members of the committee? Councillor Parkhurst.
Yeah, I just had a question about you mentioned that there's lots of issues with delivering capital strategy at the moment. I just wondered if you could go into that a bit about what if there's like the main issues, because I was reading your sort of comments in the section 151 officer comments, and it was talking about timing. Is it all to do with timing, or are there other sort of things going on? Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. If there's nobody else, if you could just answer that, because I've read the last few lines of that section, which it does actually say that it will better support better. So I think the answer is there, but I'm just to clarify, because I want to give a bit of justice to the question. It is going to make it better, because I don't want to spend anything that ain't going to make things better. And will these microphones be a bit better as well?
So the AV program should improve all the technology that we have to deliver meetings. We'll certainly be looking and should be looking at, having suffered these microphones for a number of years now, we should certainly be looking at what we can do to improve that. In terms of the reasons for the challenges, I'd say they're threefold. So one reason is as you say, some of the capital projects that we have in our programme are uncertain by their very nature. So to give you an example, we have £10 million left in the Guildhall Shopping Centre capital programme. That's entirely dependent on leases being ended by occupiers and a new lease being undertaken to come out. So we don't know when necessarily someone won't renew their lease and we get a new tenant in. How the commercial property market tends to work is the owner pays for the capital cost up front and then recovers it through the rents throughout the life of the lease. Secondly, we are struggling to recruit and maintain in both engineering and in corporate property, which are the two principal areas that manage the really big, expensive capital programs. So bridges, walls, rivers, canals, and our property are covered by those two areas, and we're having real challenges in terms of recruiting those staff. So that is those are the main reasons why we're struggling to deliver. The final one, as you will have seen from some of the reports that have come back, like the MRF in 21st, we're struggling to get things in on budget. So you set a budget, by law, that's what officers can go and spend. We're going out to tender, the price is coming back significantly higher. We have to come back to council to get additional funding, and all that takes time, and therefore you struggle to deliver in the time frame that you were hoping to do. And in terms of the other question, oh no, I've answered the other question, sorry, thank you.
So we've got two recommendations there, which I'm going to move from the chair. Can I have a seconder, please? Councillor Dunning. All those in favour, please show.
That's unanimous, Chair. That has been carried.
Thank you very much. We move on now to item 8, which is the HRA Budget Monitoring Report, Quarter 3. And there are two parts of this one recommendation. David?
Thank you, Chair. The HRA has remained remarkably similar right throughout the financial year, but there are three things that I really want to highlight. The bad news first. So there's been significant challenges in the repairs and maintenance budget, and it's significantly overspent, £1.1 million. There's been a substantial number of voids, and as members can imagine, it's a balance between having to spend the money quickly to get the voids reoccupied and get the rents back, And so that budget's been under pressure, but we've been reporting that since Q1. That has been offset by two significant areas. Firstly, interest rates. Again, the general fund pays the HRA for the use of the funds for its own purposes, and therefore the HRA has attracted more investment interest than was anticipated when the budgets were set. And secondly, capital charges are about £350,000 lower than budgeted. That sounds like good news, but actually the capital charges we are allowed to use them for capital expenditure, to finance capital expenditure, and therefore it's taking out of one and giving with the other, unfortunately. So I think looking forward, repairs and maintenance is an area that we're really going to have to monitor closely going forward. We've taken some of the benefits in setting the HRA budget for 24-25 from the investment interest, and therefore repairs and maintenance will have to be closely monitored and managed. As members will be aware, the more we spend in the revenue account, the less we have available for capital projects in the HRA. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you, David. Leaders, Councillor Mitchell.
Just following up on what David has said about the repairs and maintenance, as he says, it's an ongoing situation. Is there a strategy in place to recover the situation, and what timescale is that likely to take place so this thing's back in balance again?
Okay, thank you. Councillor Moore.
Thank you. I just wondered if the portfolio holder might report back on some of our conversations about the budget from the Council Housing Advisory Board, because we discussed this budget in a bit of detail, particularly about the non-expenditure on the sundry land maintenance in relation to trees, but also in relation to the issue of property maintenance, because this is obviously the Q3 report, and then there was concern about people being able to get their repairs done during the last quarter and what the final outturn will be in terms of an overspend, because there'll be a big demand for repairs this quarter because of the weather. So it's quite an uncertain picture at this point, because this is a Q3 report. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other contributions? We'll deal with that in a moment. There's no need to go into detail on that at the moment. Any other contributions from executive members? I'm reluctant to get into a scrutiny of what's going on with the Housing Advisory Committee, because I feel sure that is the role of that housing. I'm assuming that some of this is discussed with them, and I think that is the best way, the best work of detail. But if you could just, and I don't want a lengthy report, just are these things being dealt with at the appropriate level and committee?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, they are being at the appropriate level. As Councillor Moore know, we have taken on some other contracts so that other people can go in and repair, over meres. So we are dealing with that. The thing is, about the costs, we need, as Dave said, we need to get the repairs done, and we do need to do the voids as well to make sure that people move in, and also that we can regain the rents. In regard to the Housing Board, there are reports done, and they are brought up at the Housing Board. And if Councillor Moore wishes to send an email, then we can answer all those questions.
So there's full engagement.
Yeah, there is.
Okay, so we've got the recommendations before us. I'm going to move those recommendations from the chair. Can I have a seconder, please? All those in favour of the recommendations I'd like to make?
That's unanimous, Chair. That has been carried.
Thank you. We now move on to agenda item 9, the Household Support Fund, Scheme 5. And here is one recommendation. David.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, this is Scheme 5, which was announced on the 6th of March by the Chancellor in the budget. It's a 6-month extension to the Household Support Fund to run from the 1st of April 2024 to 30th of September 2024. Given the timing of the announcement, the timing of the notification of the award, and the guidance from DWP, we are seeking delegation to myself in consultation with you as leader and the portfolio holder for Council Housing Development and Support Services to agree the scheme to ensure that we're able to spend the money by the 30th of September. If we were to wait till the next executive and council, that would give us just 11 weeks to be able to spend, and it's highly likely we would not be able to distribute all the funds. I can give you a couple of updates, however, from the time the report was written. So we've now had an indication from Devon County Council that our allocation of funding may be £309,000, with 54,000 for administration of the scheme. But we have not yet had the official grant agreement to confirm this. Devon's required to send their overall delivery plan to DWP by the 10th of May, so hopefully that will be forthcoming very quickly. We have had guidance now that the support should, rather than focus on one group, it should be broad to a cross-section of vulnerable households, including disabled people, care leavers, and people with caring responsibilities. The team's currently working on the policy as we speak to reflect this guidance, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Okay, David, before I go to the leaders, so some of that information about the 309k and about the grant agreement, we may be able to say something at the 23rd of April at the full council in relation to that.
Hope so.
Yeah, so, and if we can't, then as soon as that does come, I'll be asking us to do an all councillor email, so keep up to speed. Okay, leaders. Councillor Mid.
Thank you, Chair. In relation to 8.8, which identifies all the categories that you referred to and the extensive number, while some of them can be easily recognised from data banks held by councils, my concern is how do we ensure those people who really need this help of a safety net can apply and can get hold of this funding, rather than us directing it towards people being directed towards us? How do we ensure that happens?
Thank you. Councillor Moore.
Thank you very much. This money is welcome, but it's too little and too late, and too short a period of time of 6 months. People, we need to have more certainty about this. My question sort of follows on from that in a way. Do we have any data from previous rounds to inform the level of demand and trends? And were we in previous rounds able to fulfil all the requests that were made for the household support fund? I think we need to know that if we aren't able to do that, we should be telling government that this is not enough. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other members of the executive? Councillor Parkhurst.
Yeah, I'm just echoing that this money is obviously really welcome. I was just curious about if it is 309,000, how much, whether that's sort of similar to previous household support fund schemes.
Councillor Williams.
Yeah, following on from Councillor Parker, so just wondered whether once we get that amount, are we likely to get another top-up? Because I believe we've had that in the past where Devon have kept some back and then topped up councils where it's been shown there's sort of a greater need in some areas or some districts than others.
Okay, thank you. Anything else? Councillor Denning.
Hi, as everyone says, these funds are really, really welcome. In regard to finding the right people that are enabled for this, we have got records of people who've had these benefits before and the payouts, so we can reach them. But in previous times, we have actually done things for food banks and made people aware of this as well. I'm pretty sure Dave has got more answers in regard to funds and whatever, but it is too little. We do need more, and we do need to tell the government that we need more in that that I'm agreement with. But we at least we have something that we can give to people that require the extra funds, and I know that they will be put to good use.
Thank you. Just on that, the data could be made available as not individuals and that sort of stuff about the amounts that can be made available, what it's been like and everything else. David, if that would be interesting data to give. Councillors totally agree it's not enough money. I can assure the members, together with people watching, that definitely Labour leaders have been pressing government and making representations, hopefully to a potentially new government about these sorts of issues. That really we shouldn't continue to have these sorts of hands out. Everything should be properly done. So in view of what Barbara, Councillor Dennon has said, and we can get that data out once we know a little bit, because sounds good, we want to know it's being spent. I think it has been over the time, but we need to know that. So we got the recommendations there. I'm going to move them from the chair. Can I have a seconder, please? All those in favour?
That's unanimous, Chair. That has been carried.
Thank you very much. I'm going to move on now to item 10. So this is for the climate adaptation strategy for Devon, Cornwall and the Isles of Scilly. And who have I got dealing with this one? And take a rest, David, Victoria and David Bartram.
Thank
Who's
you,
batting
Chair.
first?
I'm going to bat first. Thank you, Chair. So this report is endorsing the climate adaptation strategy for Devon, Cornwall and the Isles of Scilly. And the purpose of the strategy is to set out how we can create the conditions to adapt to climate change across the wider region. The strategy is being produced by RSK. It kind of shows on the front cover of the strategy. And it's with support from the Devon, Cornwall and Isles of Scilly Climate Impacts Group. It's a bit of a mouthful. And the group are coordinating regional action on climate adaptation and to improve resilience across the region. It's myself from the City Council who sits on that group, representing the organisation and the city. The group is chaired by the Environment Agency and we meet once a month, and it just so happens that we met this morning, reviewing some of the risks that are included within the strategy. The document includes a risk register. It also has the adaptation plan, action plan. All of these will be reviewed in 5 years' time. When the document was put together, there were 5 themes that were scored as being the most severe for the region. And again, this is covering the whole region. And this is around river and surface water flooding, sea level rising, reduced water availability and temperature change, whether that be hot or cold temperature changes. And also those cascading impacts such as multiple hazards that concur at a same time or sequentially. Within the strategy, there are 64 impacts that have been identified and evaluated, and those are across 5 sectors. And 18 are severe, 28 are major, 16 moderate, 1 minor, and 1 negligible. And those sectors being the natural environment, infrastructure, health and the built environment, cross-cutting, business and industry. Local authorities such as Exeter will really play a strategic role and an influential role in preparing our communities, businesses, stakeholders for the changes ahead. The City Council will draw in the actions from the strategy to inform the work of the Net Zero team and, when appointed, the new programme manager for citywide Net Zero. Thank you.
Thank you. David Bartram, do you want to add anything?
I think I was just going to say, Chair, the report probably unsurprisingly doesn't tell us anything that hasn't been talked about for the last few years. So it talks around wetter winters, hotter, drier summers, and the impact of sea level rise. So the wetter winters for us, warmer, wetter winters, Devon and Cornwall as a whole is really susceptible to flash rainfall events and heavy flooding, as we all know. The hotter, drier summers, obviously that impacts on water resources, and as we've seen for the last couple of years, we've had water restrictions in place. And the sea level rise for us impacts obviously on our coastal communities, but also on coastal erosion as well. and that's combined with the stormy nature of the weather patterns that we're predicting. So I don't think there are any big surprises in there. It's things that we've known about for some time, but it's sobering, and the actions in there are very important for us and our net zero team.
Thank you, David and Victoria. Leaders, Councillor Moore.
Thank you very much and for your work on this. It's really important. The report is, again, another sobering read, setting out the impacts of climate change, which is here and affecting us already. And in the report, it says that local authorities, in partnership with DEFRA, need to plan for and implement climate change adaptation at a local level, and that relates to some of our statutory functions. So in terms of this recommendation that's coming to council, and that we endorse this as a council, can the executive share their thoughts about how these measures set out in this 5-year strategy will be incorporated into our new local plan that is emerging, because this seems the most relevant statutory function that we do that has the biggest impact. Thank you.
Councillor Mitchell.
Again, I'd like some knowledge of what if any, the statutory function of this document is. It's just an advisory board. Are we signing up to it? Do we have to agree to it? Does it have planning implications and other implications in the longer term? And I was highly excited by the idea that I need a map to tell me where Devon and Cornwall is on page 99. I just worked that one out. I hadn't realised before where Devon and Cornwall were, but I know now thanks to the map. But I was interested, there's a lot of hard work on in here. It relates to the net zero, and as you know, different authorities in Devon have different timescales. Those going for 2050 have a different horizon than us going for 2030. So therefore, the priorities are different and the timescales are different. And I'm just wondering how that fits in to this document and the timescale it is thinking about. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other members? I'll come back to you at the end, Councillor Parkhouse. Any other members wish to talk about it? Okay, Councillor Parkhouse.
Yeah, I just want to thank Victoria and David for working on this with the RSK authors of the report. I think it's important to note that one of the first things I asked when I saw this was, okay, what are we not doing? Is it saying we should be doing something that we're not already? And the answer is no, which I was glad to hear. And actually, a lot of the recommendations within the report and the action plan that targets local government are more county responsibilities and statutory sort of responsibilities of that council. I think it's a new report. It's good to mention as well that it isn't one that we've had every 5 years. So this obviously covers until 2027, and then hopefully we'll have another one then that will be the 5 years that follow that. Climate adaptation is really important, and really it is quite sobering reading. It's quite scary. We know we're seeing that, we've had a lot of rain, we've had a lot of droughts. It's not something, in the far distant future. It's something that we're all experiencing now. So it is really good to see that, this report and that organisations are taking this seriously, and something that we can as well take up with our new external net zero manager, who we're in the process of sort of hiring. And this can be something that we can look at, especially the parts that are also focused on the community groups and individuals, and what we can do as individuals, like installing rainwater in our gardens, or things about fitting insect screens because there's going to be more mosquitoes because it's hotter, things like that. So it is a really important document, and I'm happy to endorse it.
Okay, you mentioned mosquitoes, and quinine's always an answer to that, and you know where quinine can be found, can't you? Gin and tonic. But we'll move on. The statutory functions, I think that's quite important, what Councillor Moore has mentioned, Victoria. And could we have some sort of feedback to councillors or somehow to say, here is this report, which is good, but what is our to-do list as a consequence of this report, right? And how that fits in with what we're doing. And also with the local plan, and I'll give you a few moments to think about it, Ian, sort of, we'll mention it when we come up to item 14, the consultation on local plans. So it gives you a few moments to think about your answer to that, on how this can inform the local plan and how this would be used in reference to it. And therefore, it's not just another policy document on the desks with all the other policy documents we have on a range of things. So have a think about that in a minute. And if we can, I think that would be helpful, Victoria. So on that, we've got 2 recommendations, which I'm going to move from the chair. Can I have a seconder, please? All those in favour?
That's unanimous, Chair. That has been carried.
And before I go on to item 11, welcome to the meeting, Councillor Wright. Come and join us. She's not deliberately late. Councillor Wright is one of these strange councillors with a real job, and she's come straight from work, so we always appreciate that. So we're now on to item 11, which is the Council's Health and Safety at Work policy. And there's 2 recommendations here, and it's Simon Lane to talk us to the...
Thank you, Chair. This is a legal policy that we are required by law, as are all major employers who have employees of more than 5 people. There isn't any major changes to this report, other than administrative ones that are outlined in section 8, which largely describe the governance arrangements that have changed in the last 12 months through the change in chief executive.
Every 2 years, am I right in saying that? Every 2 years? Yes. Okay. Okay, leaders? No? Okay. Any member wish to make a contribution? No? Okay, so we got the 2 recommendations. I'll move them from the chair. Can I have a seconder, please?
I'll second, Chair.
All those in favour, please show.
That's
Thank you.
unanimous, Chair. That has been carried.
Thank you. Agenda 12. This is members' training, and I'm going to come straight to you, Bon, to talk us to the one recommendation that we're noting this report.
Yes, thank you very much, Leader. So this is a quarterly report I bring for members' information, which shows the progress on members' training programs that we have and deliver. I'm really pleased to say that, again, Appendix B shows that we have high levels of satisfaction. So 59% of members that attended show they are either very satisfied or satisfied with the training provided. Nothing below that. So I think there are four members who didn't return their forms, but otherwise members are either very satisfied or satisfied with the training provided. And Appendix A in the report sets out the attendance levels for all the sessions provided. So you'll see the average turnout is around 44%. And to my mind, that means that me and my team need to do a little bit more work, to work harder to make sure that these training sessions are more easily accessible for members. So we will be working with the councillor steering group to see how we might improve the offer that we give to members. Finally, I just want to draw members' attention to Appendix C's, which sets out the training provided by the SSS, or the Triple S training platform. You'll see what was on offer for members in that list, and you'll see that safeguarding and GDPR was particularly popular with members, and a 44% turnout was made for those. So really that's all I have to say. Very happy to take questions.
Yes, thank you. I'm impressed that members are satisfied or very satisfied. That pleases me. Leaders, Councillor Moore wanted to do.
To say that
we're satisfied, very satisfied.
Fantastic.
Very good.
Thank you.
Councillor Milcho, are you going to continue the theme here?
Just one thing, I want to improve the statistics. On the planning committee visits to Exeter development, you show 6 councillors attending. Only 6 were elected to attend. So I think that makes
Yes, so it's 100%.
Yes.
Yeah.
I was quoting the average number. The average number. You'll see it on the thing. Yeah.
Been arranged, and there were only 6 of us allowed to go. Or 6 councillors were allowed to go. And 6
Yeah.
And you were one of the lucky 6.
No, I was one of them. I did not know.
Yeah, I mean, Chair, if I may say so, so we are constantly working hard to improve the offer we have to members. We're now looking outside the organisation, bringing trainers from external, and we've had some really very popular and very informative sessions where members really did get stuck in, got involved in the detail and the nitty-gritty, and I do hope that we absolutely will continue with that.
Okay, any other members? Councillor Williams.
It's also just a little further clarification on the training, the online training in Appendix C that's on the, I think it's the County Council website. Is that right, Laura? Yes, that, so for example, that's for in a particular quarter, because I know that although we've got, for example, naught against misogyny and incel subculture, I have done that training, and I think that was in a previous quarter. So that sort of training is for people, it's sort of like a pick and mix, and you can do it in your own time if you feel you've got time to do it and it's appropriate. Whereas I think with the first 2, introduction to safeguarding and GDPR, that's where we were recommended to prioritise that training. So the other, it's there for you to do if yeah. So it's, although the low numbers don't look good, it's not a reflection on the fact that people are just not doing it.
Councillor, I'll come on to you at the end, Bob, as portfolio order. Councillor Bright.
Yeah, thank you. Just very quickly on that, the misogyny and incel subculture training is down twice in the table. So the first time it says naught, and then it's on again at the bottom, it says 3.
Councillor Foll.
Thank you, Chair. Just to say that I've chaired 3 or 4 meetings of the steering group this year, and we sought responses from all elected members across all the parties. Got 20 good responses. We saw an 80% positive response to the training, and a record number of attendees was very positive. And perhaps our role as the steering group was to look at the 20% who still had questions to ask. And with that in mind, we agreed to monitor the training provided for licensing and planning. And I believe there are some changes that are in place for those in the coming year, which I'm pleased about. The request for external speakers has been taken on board for more interactive sessions and more variety. And I think the other issue we discussed was about the timings to make it available to as many elected members as possible. But overall, a very positive year, but being proactive about the things people weren't happy about as well.
Okay, before you come in, Bon, I don't think there's many questions there. Just a remark about the SSS training. We were told, as Councillor Williams said, which ones, and we've done them. I found them they're interactive, which is good. You can drop in and drop out of it because it's saved, which is also good. So you haven't got to say, oh, it's 5:30, I'm out, I can't get back at this particular moment. I can do it when I want to do it. And it would be nice if there was some sort of option similar to that. I know costs is a thing in relation to audit and governance, licensing, and indeed planning, because it's training whereby you have to respond to a few things and get them right. You go back again, and actually getting them wrong once or twice ain't such a bad idea because it reinforces it when you're going into the next one, and it's a bit better. I prefer the training as opposed to turning on your Zoom, turning your camera off and going and eating your tea. You're actually, well, I feel sure people don't do that, but I feel sure you can go for it. You can do it when you want to do it. And I do like that interactive training. And I think that would be a good way to go forward. Those are my thoughts on the matter. We got one recommendation to note. I'm going to move that from the chair. Can I have a seconder, please? Okay, all those in favour?
That's unanimous, Chair. That has been carried.
Okay, so we got item 13 now, which is livable Exeter placemaking charter and pre-application charges. And we've got a series of recommendations, 4 recommendations there. I'm going to read them out. But we've got Ian. Ian's going to talk us to the paper and the recommendations.
Thank you, Chair. So the paper in front of you is looking to introduce a new charging regime for pre-application advice on major planning applications. So that's if it's residential, that's over 10 homes. So it's not dealing with the minor sort of householder type applications. And to frame that new service, we're also seeking support for a new charter, placemaking charter. So as I think everyone knows, we currently provide a pre-application advice service, but we don't charge for that. In the past, the council did want to encourage developers to invest in the city, hence offering that service for free. But by charging for that advice, we think we can provide a more proactive service and equally encouraging for developers. And whilst being consistent with neighbouring authorities as well, who obviously charge for that service. So the report for you tonight summarises the consultation which we undertook earlier this year on the draft charter and the pre-app charges, and is seeking recommendations for executive to seek for council approval for both. Also, the recommendations there are seeking some delegations to make some minor editorial changes before publishing the charter on the council's website, but also really importantly, because the charter is a live document and will be kept regularly under review, it's also seeking further delegations to update it as necessary during its lifetime. So there's a few issues I'd like to highlight in the report. All of the work that is involved in pre-applications and in the charter itself, it's all based on engagement and collaboration. And that's to continually improve the service that we offer to people who wish to submit planning applications. And it's also, in that sense, it's helping to build capacity for officers and members to understand the planning process. So that links into the training issue that was discussed previously. It also, the elements of the charter also follow best practice and guidance that's out there in the sector. So we're not reinventing the wheel, we're just following that good practice. Work was actually undertaken in terms of the pre-application charging. Work was undertaken to benchmark those charges, and there was also some soft market testing done with some consultants prior to launching the consultation. The fee structure itself is in 3 broad bands, reflective of the complexity and the need for specialist advice and the income that will be reinvested to improve the quality of the service. So there is a detailed summary of the consultation responses in the report. It's perhaps not that surprising that the level of response was very low and generally unfavourable. The new income stream will be reinvested to enable us to provide a better service for developers and improve some of the outcomes from the planning process in terms of design quality, but also speed of decision making. There are various elements of the charter that are already being implemented as well and follow, as I said, industry good practice. So we're just looking there to implement those areas of good practice with the additional resources that the fee generation will bring. There was also, as part of the consultation, there was some criticism around the limited scope of the consultation. I think what I would say there is that the consultation was very targeted to a specific group of likely users of the service. So the number of applications that we received that are of the major category are quite low and of a particular type, mainly through developers. So we targeted that group rather than the general population of Exeter, which wouldn't be affected by those charges because they don't relate to the smaller scale types of application. And that's all I'd like to say, really, Chair.
Hey, thank you. Just to say on the recommendations, third line of 2.4, after development, can you put stroke the leader, please? Because at the moment, I haven't appointed anybody. I'm caretaking it just to, in case something happens between now and the 2nd of May that you need to do something, that you've got the delegation sorted. Leaders.
Thank you. I welcome this proposal, as we were supporters of it at the beginning. Putting it forward, I understand the idea of 10 homes plus. That's not an issue. But the only issue I've got with the layout of the structure, and Ian, you might be able to amplify on this. I can see a difference between a developer with 15 homes. What about the one with 300 and 350 plus? Are these flat rate charges, or is it the intention that the one with the 12 homes will pay as much for a standard stage 1 fee as somebody with 350? Is there flexibility in the system to charge by the number of units being produced? Because obviously that would generate more time in regard to that. You talked about benchmarking. When I initially did some research on this, I looked at Plymouth as a prime example of a neighbouring city under the control of the same party, so that's a useful one to benchmark. What cities did we benchmark with, and are we comparable with them? And thirdly, do we need to build into the recommendation review periods for these? Is this something that should last 3-4 years and then be reviewed, or should it be a longer or shorter period? I think there should be a review built into it to see how successful it's been and whether it needs amending because of market circumstances at that time. Thank you.
Councillor Moore.
Thank you. I welcome this implementation of this approach and the charging. I'm interested to know, because obviously one of the outcomes we want to see is an enhanced planning team, and that's really good and it's very thoughtful in here. But are there any risks to the delivery of other planning applications in terms of decision making and timescales and stuff? How will it improve the capacity of the team not dealing with large applications, or is there any risk because resources will be skewed? So that's a question about risk. In some of the feedback, there was an issue around community engagement, and it obviously highlights the fact that there's a developers forum, and obviously I understand you need to have good dialogue and relationships, but how are we going to sort of formalise and improve community engagement? And another point that was picked up was around the issue of, how this relates to the democratic process, and how this will hopefully enhance decision-making processes. So will, as a matter of routine, the PPAs, the planning agreements and the design review panel reports be published so that councillors and the public can see what has been said and agreed and advised upon? Thank you.
Any other members of the executive wish to say something? Councillor Williams.
Thank you. I really welcome this document, and thank you, Councillor Parkinson. That I think previously there has been perhaps a misunderstanding by the public as to the sorts of pre-application advice that the planning department has given developers, and they've misinterpreted in terms of thinking that the developers are working hand in glove with the planners, and it's not an independent decision then when it comes to planning committee. So I think anything that we can do to help clarify the purpose of this, that it's beneficial for us, for the communities, and for the developers to actually working together to try and help developers come up with an acceptable plan. And it also saves time when it comes to planning committee as well. So it has to be welcomed. One of the concerns I have though is that when you have a developer paying for this advice and then the planning application is declined or refused by planning committee, does that sort of put us in a difficult position at all in terms of that planning advice that we have provided that can be challenged then as well? We've paid our money and we still haven't got it through planning committee. So it's just that sort of clarity that as to the level of that advice.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Parkhurst.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Williams, because that was one of my questions as well. And my second question is that so it talks about sort of timescales, and if someone goes for a standard level or scoping level, whatever, it's got timescales for you to respond as officers and contact within a certain number of days, and then meeting within a certain timescale. Is that something that you're already offering for these pre-application meetings, or is it going to be like an extra? I guess I'm asking whether this is going to create extra workload for officers, and especially in the planning team, which I'm aware is under a lot of pressure and stress from lots of other directions.
Okay, anybody else? Councillor Wright.
Thank you. Could you please expand a little bit on how specifically the fees will be reinvested back into the planning team? I know you said that they would be, but if you can be specific as to how that will then help the planning team and applicants be able to get things through quicker and more efficiently, that would be brilliant. Thank you.
Okay, there's no more questions. You've got a couple of points there. Ian, I would be very surprised if those people you consulted didn't raise that issue about 10 or 15 as opposed to 350. So if you could let us know about that, I'd be very surprised that one of them didn't mention that. The benchmark of cities, you can get back to us about that. It would be interesting to see what a lot of other places, and I don't want you to go through them all tonight, but or if there's a document you could point us to, I think that would be quite interesting. As for whether or not we need to put anything in about a review, or do we review it when we feel we need to review it? Publishing outcomes and that sort of stuff, certainly to councillors, I would have thought disclosure to councillors, they would be entitled to ask for this sort of stuff, even if that was in confidence. But could it be made public? I don't know, or whatever. And the risks, I think Councillor Williams and Parkhouse spoke about the risks. What is the impact, the risk to others, and other work we're doing, and the beneficial sort of thing. And is it as simple as no win, no fee? I don't know. Well, is it about that? So there's some interesting points that have been raised in the discussion, which some you can answer now, or certainly before the 23rd of April when we take it to, even if that was a email to all councillors, so we would have that information, because there's some good interesting points there. If you can help us now, please do.
Help you. So I think the issue about I suppose probity and decision making, that the report just sets out the sort of legal framework for charging for pre-application fees. So I won't repeat that, but it is covered by sort of process and legislation, and it's a very well established process. What effectively what you will be paying for is a quality of service, but not of decision. The decision process entirely separate. So the advice that officers would give as part of the pre-application process is the kind of advice that we already give. What this would enable us to do is be more, I guess, take a more project management approach to that, which actually then helps in the resourcing of this. The government guidance does encourage local authorities to publish things like planning performance agreements, and we would do that. We would publish them on the website. In terms of things like design review panel letters, they'll always be quoted in officer reports. We don't normally publish the actual letters, but we would effectively quote from them when we come to report those applications, either to committee or under delegations. I think the issue about difference between or diverting resources, this service would be very much contained within the major projects team, and so it would help that team to focus on the larger, more complex applications, enable the team to undertake a more sort of, as I say, project management approach. So, for example, with a PPA type approach, if we could ask for the applicant to effectively front fund that dedicated case officer, and that would enable us to backfill. So that wouldn't take away from the performance from the rest of the team, and it certainly wouldn't affect the planning team, which deals with most of the householder applications, because it's self-contained. In terms of the benchmarking, we benchmarked mainly the neighbouring authorities. If I'm honest, we'll look at other cities as well. Plymouth, for example, we'll look at what they do, but it was done in a kind of through a kind of sieving mechanism, really. So we didn't look at every single authority, but we looked at certainly our nearest neighbours and what they charge.
Size of development.
Yeah, so with the sort of approach to a flat rate, that doesn't vary depending on the number of homes. If it's a residential scheme, what it's trying to do is say there's a basic offer, which is a meeting and some advice, a more structured approach, which would carry the larger fee, and that's where you get into regular conversations, providing detailed responses, etc. And then the final approach would be through that planning performance agreement, which would be more of a bespoke arrangement based on that application. So it's trying to reflect what we actually provide, whether it's a 10-unit scheme or a 200-unit scheme. It's the level of service that the applicant will be seeking, and it's reflective of that.
Okay. Thank you. And just to confirm, I don't think it happens so much nowadays, but I'm going back several years when I was on the planning committee before we had iPads and everything else. Could come in here and see a planning officer and say this application. So that design report, which you said would be referenced, I could come in and say, look, you can reference that in that. Any chance of me seeing the file? And they used to dump a big thing. They say, get your laughing gear around that, and they would say, so there is an opportunity. I don't want councillors in particular to, because they are entitled to information which isn't always necessarily. I want councillors to feel that they will be able to access to whatever information they feel, particularly if they're on the planning committee. If they're not, they still may like to know it or see it, but I still want to. I would imagine if you just need to say yes, that they could still come and ask for that. And that will do. So I want to assure people that information is there and readily available to councillors to help them make their decisions. So with that in mind, 2.4 line 3 after development, I'm going to move as amended / the leader. So with that,
you want to do 3 as well?
3 was it in there? Yeah, and in there as well, please. Well done, Mark. I knew you were here for a reason. Thank you.
So the second of the amendment.
I hope I will. I'm about to ask. Can I have a seconder for the amendment, please?
Yes.
Oh, there we are. We've got one. So I'm going to move the recommendations as amended. All those in favour of the recommendations as amended, please show.
The recommendations have been carried as amended.
Thank you very much. We'll move on now to item 14, which is the Exeter Plan full draft consultation reporting. And we've got a recommendation here that we note the content. And I did make reference to the issue about the climate change, and I think from that is code for flooding. If you could let us know something about that and how it will inform any plan we go forward, or if it needs to, or if it's already there, I'll leave you to come into that. So Ian, please.
So I'll start, Chair, and then I'll let George explain some more of the detail about the consultation, and I'll try and answer that question about the climate strategy as well.
Long time to think about it.
The executive is recommended to note the report, which is a very detailed report about the consultation. Just one or two things I'd like just to sort of focus on before I hand over to George. First thing to say is that this is the third major consultation we've done on the plan during its lifetime. This is also the first full draft of the Exeter plan that we've consulted on. So it has all the policies, proposals, map and site allocations that you'd expect to see in the final version of the plan. That final version, by the way, we'll be preparing that ready for a further fourth consultation later this year before we submit it to the planning inspector for full examination. The consultations that we've undertaken this time also follow the work that was done on the first outline draft of the plan last year, and that included the 12-week online consultation with exhibitions, with in-person events. I'd like to think as well we did a little bit more. We even ran coffee mornings for this consultation, and we were also really assisted really well by the community builders as well. So all of that work was done as part of that. I'll hand over to George in a moment just to explain more about that and also some of the highlights that came out of the responses to the consultation. I think in terms of the climate emergency strategy, that is a really important document. It'll be part of the evidence base that underpins the Exeter plan. It's also, I think, worth saying that a lot of aspects of that document do relate to the Exeter plan in a land use sense. So things like sort of transport, infrastructure, health, jobs, all of those things are relevant in terms of what the Exeter plan will do. So that in a sense, it does look to implement some of those strategy recommendations where it impacts on land use planning.
Okay, George. Anything to add at this stage?
Thanks, Ian. Thanks, Chair. Just a little bit more. Ian has said gone over some of the consultation activities that we went through for this consultation. We did add to and slightly vary some of our consultation engagement methods this time. We used slightly different venues. We did some coffee mornings to try and engage with a wider variety of people, as Ian has said. We used a larger number of quick questions to try and give people a very quick way of informing us on their views on some key items. We use social media a lot more, particularly Instagram towards the end of the consultation. And for the first time, we had a full audio version of the documentation online. So we're trying to push the activities that we do to widen that engagement as best we can. I will summarise, because the information is in the report, with just a few summary points. In terms of the consultation in numbers, the total number of responses we received to this consultation was nearly 2,900 from around 1,100 respondents. So people can obviously respond on various parts of the plan, leaving more than one comment. We spoke to more than 500 people at the exhibitions, and another 100 at the coffee mornings, the 5 coffee mornings that we linked up with. And the website received more than 11,000 hits during the 12 weeks. I mentioned the quick questions, so these are a way of teasing out some of the high-level issues that are part of our strategy within the plan and understanding people's views on those. We received positive support for all of the approaches that we set out in our quick questions, particularly in relation to energy efficiency, renewables, high-tech business and training, and increasing a variety of uses in our city centre. We also received firm support for our brownfield approach, including an understanding of potential higher density where appropriate, and we also delved into building heights a little bit more. So they're quite high profile matters and issues currently, but we received firm support for that element of the strategy as articulated through our quick questions. You'll be pleased to know I'm not going to go through 61 policies and how well or otherwise they were received, but 41 of the 61 topic-based policies were well received. That is, at least 50% of the responses identifying support for them, and that included the spatial strategy, which is our overarching policy which drives the wider content of the plan and how we will meet our development requirements. So that's a positive endorsement of that approach. And then briefly, in terms of the sites, members will remember that we had a variety of sites within the draft plan, so 6 strategic mixed-use sites, 18 predominantly residential sites, and 4 employment sites. The sites with the largest number of responses tended to be our livable Exeter sites, or our larger brownfield sites, in addition to a proposal at Exbridges Retail Park. So those large-scale brownfield sites were generally generating and yielding the largest interest. 4 of the sites received 50% or more of general support. All of these were brownfield development sites. 4 of the 5 sites which received the least level of support were greenfield, the other being the Exbridges Retail Park site, as I've already said. So again, that demonstrates interest, in a particular site, but it also suggests an overarching support for a brownfield series of site as opposed to greenfield, which is key to our development strategy. The report sets out a little bit of information comparing the level of responses to the full draft, so this consultation with that which we ran previously. There was a slight reduction in level of engagement, and as I said, when we reported to strategic scrutiny back in March, it's quite difficult to know exactly why that is, but it's probably as a result of the consultation taking place later in the year and the poor weather, particularly that there are various storms that are running on the same day as some of our exhibition events, which didn't help. There's probably an element of people feeling as though they've seen a lot of this content previously, although there was a lot of new content. A lot of the site material was quite similar. There's also a number of other high-profile consultations that this council but others have run at similar timings, and I guess that plays into potential consultation fatigue as well. We were monitoring our level of engagement throughout the process, and that enabled us to up our efforts, particularly in terms of social media towards the end, which kept our response rate relatively high, which was positive. In terms of next steps, Ian's already covered this, but we will use the responses and the analysis that we've included in the appendix that we're seeking to note this evening to inform the next stage of the plan, which should be our final draft. That will go alongside our evidence preparation efforts that we're currently undertaking. And also alongside continued discussions with members through scrutiny committee and planning member working group, as we're already doing.
Thank you, George. Leaders.
Sorry, no, I was going to follow. No. I wish to say something, but I was deferring to my colleague first.
Thank you. Thank you. This is, I do want to thank you because this is a huge amount of work, and I really recognise that and appreciate that. And it affirms the overall approach, which is good, but it does highlight that there are a number of issues that are not necessarily compatible with one another, which do need some robust discussion and decision within the council before that next draft. Now, in discussion with you, Leader, we've agreed there's going to be a workshop, and you've talked about some discussions at the planning member working group, but that doesn't have any sort of formal policy influencing status. I am very concerned that it's proposed to go to one scrutiny meeting only as one item on a number, with a number of others in one meeting. So I know, Leader, that you'll say you don't get involved in scrutiny, but I do feel that in the new electoral year, we do need to have an agreed process for members to be able to form and shape and address some of these strategic issues that are highlighted. For example, about the protection of nature, the nature of the density and the heights, the issues that have been highlighted about how we house our students within the city, and some of these other issues that that have come up. Because the consultation is not a referendum, it's set out the approach, it's affirmed an approach with the community, but we actually then need to take decisions and direction based upon that before it gets presented again back to the community. Thank you.
Councillor Mitchell.
Just add on from what Councillor Moore said, I almost feel this is like one of those football matches where you've got a 4-hour programme for a 90-minute actual main event that we've spent a lot of time leading up to this with consultations, drafts, second drafts and whatever. And I'm looking forward to the main event when I can get my actual, as an elected member, have a full discussion on the final draft that we see, because I think, as with everything else, that there's so much that is good about it, and normally would not, that is not controversial in any sense, that people would assume this is a natural way of thinking in the way a local authority should progress. But I think it's only, as Councillor Moore said, when like a jigsaw puzzle, it's only when you put all the component parts together do you see whether there's any friction or conflict that needs resolving. And I look forward to that stage when we get a briefing by members, and then at a full council can debate whether the draft is as we would wish to carry forward. And I do thank George, being a member of Planning Working Group, on the chapter by chapter account that we had, and Councillor Williams was there today when we talked about employment, city centre, neighbourhood areas, etc. And that was helpful. And that, but in a way, that was the right platform for that sort of discussion, because it doesn't take place in scrutiny in that format or a full council meeting in that format. So I do push with my fellow co-leader here that we do need some forum where members can look in some depth at this, not in an adversarial way, but to actually go through and improve their own self-knowledge of the local plan, but also then when we come to make the decision in full council, it becomes a corporate decision across parties and doesn't become in any sense a political issue. Thank you.
Okay. Any other leaders wish to respond to come in? Councillor Williams.
Right, I just think this is a fantastic summary. It's very readable, but it takes a very long time. It's very well presented, and I just shudder at the thought of having to process thousands of responses from various groups in the public. So very, very well done, and congratulations to the team. I'm somewhat alarmed by the comments that have been made in terms of having a debate, at council about this, because really we should have sorted out any sort of input from members well before then, given all these different stages in the consultation. And the consultations are there not just for the public, but for members as well. So yeah. So I just think that we're moving towards this. For me, I'm not concerned that the level of feedback and comments in the second consultation is lower, because I think you probably just did a very, very good job first time round. You know, I mean, really hitting all the buttons, doing all these different styles of consultation, going to different venues, just a huge effort. And thank you so much for doing that, because it was a considerable amount of time for the team to be doing that, to make sure it was done properly. I've just got one suggestion, though, that when you have these sorts of consultations and you've got the next draft, the next iteration, it is really helpful if you can just pick out where the key changes or differences are, because it might just help people engage a second or third or fourth time if they know that there was something specific that they were interested in. It's just helpful to be able to focus and help individuals to get and look at it again. So that's my comment. Thank you.
Councillor Denning.
So, thank you, Leader. Again, I'd like to thank the staff for all the hard work that's gone into the consultation. And can I say it's a good consultation? Perhaps Devon County Council could learn how to do a consultation, because this is really good. Okay, but what I would like to say is, it's the thing that has come out of this report or the consultation for me is that it's been the residents that have really taken part in this, and they've actually landscaped this consultation. Okay, and they've been taken notice of, which is really, really important. So I'd like to applaud them so far for doing this, because it's really important. And I know that the residents are going to feel as if they've been listened to in this report. And, you know, I just think that that should be mentioned. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other member? Well, just to say on a couple of points here, this is important. And when we talk about the next steps, which is on page 302 of the papers, which it says that it is to inform the next stage of the plan making process. I agree, councillors have a role in all of this. They are elected by their communities. They are entitled to speak on behalf of the communities. However, we are at this process listening to the public, not directing them, listening to them in some of it. Now, the planning member working group are having these chapters put to them, which are informative. Sorry, I wasn't there today, but I'm assuming they are open to all members to attend, should they wish to attend. It will go to scrutiny. And so what I'll be asking, in my role of caretaking this up until May anyway, in relation to, I want a complete process identified to councillors as to how we will be taking this forward and how councillors will be involved in all this, whether it's through scrutiny, planning member working group, a separate brief or whatever, how we will be listening to councillors on to have their input, because they will be representing their communities. They are elected to that. Not that they have some special status above the residents and all that, but they are representative and they need to speak in that way. So we will try to do that to fit in with what we are required to do as well in the process. But even then, if not as a councillor, as a member of the public, you can get involved. And I think I did do a couple of those quick ones of that, because that suits me. But to do it quickly. But so that's what we will do, and I will try to get that out to members within the next, whether or not I'll have it for the 23rd to be able to say at council. I think we need to resolve that, but I'm trying to give that assurance that we will be involving councillors at the appropriate time when they've got it all in front of them, and not at a time when it's too late either. So with that, those are the recommendations. Can I have a seconder for the recommendations, please? All those in favour?
That's unanimous, Chair. That has been carried.
Okay, and now we move on to item 15, and thank you JP and James for enduring the meeting thus far, and we'll come on to the Womford Community Wellbeing Hub, and there's two important recommendations here, and it's not quite frightened me, the amount of money that's quoted in the second recommendation, but you'll explain all of that to us. JP.
Thank you, Chair. Really appreciated. We've got a couple of slides just to go through some of the key points, as you imagine, with a project this slide. I just wanted to make a quick clarification because it's really early on. So in 1.1, it says in February 2002, it was 2022. But it's taken a while, but not the extra 20 years. So I just want to flag that before we started. Thank you.
Thanks, John Paul. Just thought I'd take the opportunity to go back a few years with the kind of high level response from the community about what they wanted to see in terms of the vision for health and wellbeing in Wamford, and particularly at the centre. Our previous engagement, which had over 600 responses from the local community, told us that they wanted a development that brought the community together to improve health and wellbeing of local residents. Look, really importantly, which came through loud and clear, was the connection to that open space. So how those buildings at the moment don't necessarily lend themselves to people walking through and accessing the beautiful countryside at Ludwell Valley and the playing pitches in the Green Circle. And finally, really importantly, having a voice to develop the facility for themselves, so that it was felt that the Wamford Community Wellbeing Hub was for the residents rather than a sports centre, which at the moment largely feeds people from outside of the local area. Since February 2022, we have been busy through the Live and Move team and colleagues at Exeter Leisure and the Community Centre trustees to deliver a programme of work to get us to this stage ahead of formal planning, facilitated a community-led vision, and there's a website link there which has got all the information of the engagement that we've done over the last 2 years. You'll see through Appendix A the full business case. We've done in-depth community engagement and design with the trustees. We have a completely new set of trustees at the centre, which are helping us guide through the co-design work and also working through the options of what a future management model and governance arrangements might look like for the facility. There's been a full suite of technical investigations and surveys, as you would expect. We've completed REBA Stage 2 and we're currently progressing alongside our stakeholders and planning colleagues REBA Stage 3 design. We will circulate, if you haven't seen it already, a link with the fly-through video that our architects have prepared. And we've also very recently, in the last 3 weeks, delivered further pre-planning engagement sessions with the local community. You've got the chance to see those videos and the designs that I'm just about to walk through. This is the current building with the leisure centre on the left in red, the community centre on the right in yellow. The smaller blue square in the middle is the youth centre, and the larger blue rectangle at the top is the existing gym, and around the blue dotted line is the current large area of disused changing rooms, and on the left, the white block there is the multi-use games area. We're proposing through these designs to retain the community centre and the leisure centre buildings, with them being redeveloped throughout. The long yellow building through the middle is the redevelopment that brings the whole site together with one entrance, one reception, and a cafe that opens out onto the Green Circle and the Ludwell Valley. Just got a few visuals to walk you through here. This is the view from the Ludwell Valley and the Green Circle, with the multi-use games area there on the left and the community hub there in the centre. Very different to the vista that you get at the moment. That's the current front of the building. You can see the joint reception there from the left-hand side as you enter into the area, and then on the right-hand side as you move around towards the car park. And the white structure on the right is would be the new gym. Rather like this visual, I guess this is what we're trying to deliver in the local community, that central space where people come together to connect, to meet each other, to get access to services, and to be guided into the area of the building that they might want to access, be it leisure, be it youth, or be it community. That is the current proposed design. We're going through technical consultation with Sport England and other stakeholders as we speak, but that's the floor plan that you'll be able to see in more detail once the slides are circulated. I've lifted some high-level information from the report around the finances, which highlights the capital cost of £7 million based on current forecasts. And then in terms of the revenue forecast, that's highlighted in the table at the base, which identifies a 5-year business case, which demonstrates a revenue of 51k by year 5. Finally, in terms of next steps,
we're proposing to continue with the design development, supporting them and our planning colleagues ahead of formally submitting the planning application, likely to be in June. We've got ongoing conversations with funding partners, including Sport England. We will continue to work with in our co-designed approach with the trustees and leisure colleagues on a monthly working design group, and there'll be ongoing community engagement through the trustees and also our local community COGS group, which is led by Wamford residents. So thank you, Chair.
Thank you, JP. Is there anything you want to add at this stage, or
So thank you, Chair.
no? Okay, leaders.
Councillor Moore.
Thank you very much for this, and it seems like an elegant sort of solution, putting something to the middle without having to knock everything down. So that's very good. And just had a look at your business case. I'm just in the report, it had a number of different options in terms of the approach to governance arrangements and the options for legal structures. And so I just would like to know how that issue is going to be resolved. You know, who's going to make the choice about the option, and how will the community be involved in that? And once that is resolved, the organisation responsible for taking forward this project, as we've seen in year one, is going to need a substantial amount of working capital in order to cash flow that deficit during the first year. So in terms of your next steps, to what extent will looking for that working capital be part of that? Because we don't want to set up a new community organisation for them to struggle during that year before it becomes profitable, or then have a problem with the council having to bail them out, and that isn't a helpful way to go. But otherwise, thank you very much for your work so far.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Mitchell.
Just a question on relation to the capital funding for this project. What percentage of the capital requirements do you think will be met through grant funding, and will there be a shortfall?
Okay, thank you. Any other members want to say something? Councillor Denning.
Thank you. Yeah, I just welcome this, mainly because having lived in the area for since 1975, I moved into Rifford Road, can I say, and I was one of the first families to use the Wamford hub back all those years ago, and it was groundbreaking, and it made a lot of difference to the area. I think the Wamford area is one of the most deprived areas that we have in our city. It deserves this new hub. I have family who live in the area and who are quite excited about it. And all I can say is we really need to support it. And I do know that, we're looking at the figures, it's a lot of money, but it is very achievable. And I know that the people of Wamford and St. Loy's along Rifford Road, Burnhouse Lane and all the areas off of it are quite excited about this. And all I can say is, good luck, and I hope that this venture really, really goes forward.
Thank you. Any other member wish? Councillor Parkhouse.
Yeah, I'm obviously got a bit of a history with this one and having this portfolio last year, so it's really great to see this all come through, and especially just echoing what Councillor Denning has said about the value to the residents. I think this is going to be a tremendous social value to residents living in the area. It's not necessarily a massive profit that we're going to get from this centre, but it's more the community benefit, and it's the social benefit, the benefit to people's physical activity, the benefit to getting more people into the green space, into the green circle, and accessing those spaces, and making that the centre a bit more open as well in terms of tackling that tricky antisocial behaviour in the area and things like that. So I think just really great work, and it would be great to see this come to fruition, and because it's such a fantastic project.
Thank you. Anybody else? No? Well, just to say on the point too, because I don't want to get too much into here and now about business cases and everything else like that. talks about the potential funding options. And so what I would intend to do is to, and it's disappointing for Councillor Wood because I think he would have loved to have been here. This is part of his baby and started, I know, back when I had the sport in the communities, it was important then to bring forward and to engage that community to feel that they're part of something as opposed to have something being done to them, if you know what I mean, and not thinking that that was the place that they should go, but now they can, hopefully, with this. So we need to interrogate that business case because business cases, 51k after 5 years sounds good. So as we all know, a lot of businesses, grant funding, if that can come in and all that sort of stuff. But sometimes you do borrow against any potential income. But I wouldn't want to be doing that unless that income was going to be there, if you see what I mean. That would be all part of the business case. So we need to interrogate that. And we've got time to do that by April 25 or something before. And I'm just hoping that there will be, between now and April 25, well, it will be a new government, even if it's the same ones, if you understand what I mean, a new government, and they may have a new emphasis towards some of these things, and we can bring forward a structured business case. So we need to interrogate those figures and to look at all that, and that's what I would want to do with the portfolio holder, and then go back to scrutiny to say, this is it, this is what it looks like, to give the councillors an opportunity to make sure that we're still engaging the local community and everything else like that, because they will be saying there was some 106 money set aside a good time ago for some improvements. Where is that money gone? What's happened to it? And they were saying that to me several years ago, and we need to, and we will make sure. So what I'm trying to say is that this is going to be a well thought through project. It's not going to be something we're just going to rush and say, oh, that looks good. Let's go out there and tell Dave up there to go and borrow the money and everything else, not at 8%, and all that sort of stuff, because we have to worry about the money. And that's what Dave has done to us. He has got us to worry about the money. And that's all I do is worry about the money, because if we don't worry about the money, well, none of us are going to be here to be able to do any projects like this. So I hope that gives the other leaders some confidence that how we're going to do it, how we're going to bring it back, because this really needs to be examined properly. It's what we want to do. It is a high priority. We got a number of them at the moment, but with something else like the MRF, I'm not saying that we've got a spare 7 million lying around at this particular moment in time, but we found it, we got it, and we've got to be able to do that. So we will take it in that way, and we'll be transparent in how we're dealing with it, interrogating it. So with that in mind, the two recommendations, JP, did you want to come back on anything?
The chair, you captured that. Thank you.
Thank you. Dave, you worried me when you walked back there. Is it something about money I'm worried about? Have I said something? Are you going to tell me I shouldn't have said, apart from we need to look at this properly? I think you would agree with that, Dave. Do you want to?
Worried about money?
Frightfully so, David. You've done that to us all in a nice way. So there's two recommendations there. I'm going to move them from the chair. Can I have a seconder, please? All those in favour?
That's unanimous, Chair. Has been carried.
Thank you. And now we've got item 16, which is Live and Move Sport England Place Partner 25 to 28. So I think this is JP and James again. So there's a couple of recommendations here. JP, if you can talk us through the recommendations and the paper, please.
Thank you, Chair. Again, would you hand this one, if this is okay, but this works in hand in glove with some of the work that we've been doing in Womford and our long-term relationship with Sport England, and hopefully in the next chapter. James, please.
Thank you.
So just to recap at a high level, the Live and Move programme, which is our brand for the physical activity work through the council and our stakeholders in partnership with Sport England, was launched in 2017. We've received over £7 million of investments. It's about £1 million year on year since 2017, having an extensive partnership with Sport England during that period. The current funding and existing programme comes to an end on the 31st of March 2025. So this report seeks approval to bid to Sport England to become a longer term place partner to 2028 alongside the other 11 local delivery pilots that started on this journey several years ago. It seeks member approval to continue our work with Exeter City Council, playing a lead role in the Place Partner programme, and to deepen the work of the Live and Move based on the impact, the learning, and the insight that we've gathered to date. Hopefully, members can see it's intrinsically linked to the City Council's the Exeter vision and also our council's strategic priorities of building great neighbourhoods, promoting active and healthy lifestyles, and elements of the programme, particularly around walking and cycling, that promote net zero. There's potential, as we've seen through the Wantford report, to unlock other investment opportunities through being a place partner, through the strategic capital investment that Sport England have for facilities. Important to note that Sport England have invested nearly £2 million into Wellbeing Exeter programme over the last 5 years, and is a really important part of our proposal going forward. We presented to scrutiny at the tail end of last year in terms of the information that came through our local active lives survey in detail. This is a summary of the presentation that went to scrutiny at the tail end of last year, which highlights our impact. Really importantly, we're seeing a year-on-year trend of the people doing nothing. So those people who register as doing 0 minutes of physical activity per week, and they're obviously those residents that we want to help and support the most, because that will be the greatest health benefit to the city. And inactivity rates across the Exeter priority areas are down to 13%, which is one of the lowest figures in the country when you look at areas of deprivation within cities. We've seen a really strong bounce back in terms of physical activity levels on the back of COVID, which is also, it bucks the trend nationally. We can be proud that in the city we have a really narrow gender inequality gap in terms of physical activity. So physical activity rates of men and women are really similar in the city, which also bucks the national trend. We've seen a significant recovery of physical activity levels for our diverse communities, and I would hope that members have seen some of the fantastic work that one of our local partners, Inclusive Exeter, have been doing for a number of their diverse communities across the city, and particularly also in Wantford, where they've hosted some excellent festivals recently. We're seeing a significant positive link between the use of GP referrals, both through our Exeter Leisure programme and also Wellbeing Exeter, which is demonstrating increased wellbeing for those people that access those programmes across the city. And we're seeing the scale and the impact of the Wellbeing Exeter programme, which we also took to a full member briefing earlier on the year with the range of evaluation that we're delivering alongside that programme. Some of the interesting things that have come out of that evaluation is that we've seen an 11% real increase in the proportion of families taking part in regular physical activity together. And it's those habits that make a really, really significant impact in the long term. And also just to focus on those 12 areas that are in partnership with Sport England, they are demonstrating that inactivity levels are reducing 2.5 times faster in the 12 areas that they've invested in than the national population as a whole, kind of demonstrating the place-based approach and the investment in those areas, which is reflected in their new strategy. It's also showing some real tangible impact in terms of social return on investment, and that's a significant figure there of £80 million across those 12 areas. Apologies for the small text in this diagram. You'll be able to see this both through the report and the slides. This is our high-level programme structure that we'll be proposing to Sport England for the next 3 years beyond April 2025, which maintains Wellbeing Exeter, Wantford, our partnership with Cranbrook, amongst a number of other programme strands. On the right-hand side, we'll be clearly articulating how those programmes of work both impact on council priorities and vision, and also the Sport England 4 big outcomes around tackling inequalities, decreasing physical activity, increasing activity and creating positive experiences for children, young people, and our bid will very much centre on that. And we'll be looking to submit that bid to Sport England within the next 4 or 5 weeks in the middle of May, which will be presented to Sport England Board in June, and we'll report back to Council following that process. Thank you.
Good. Thank you, James. Those priorities and outcomes are very, very, very important. And some of those figures on activity have been improved, courtesy of the lift not working here in the Civic Centre, and also Stagecoach for me having to walk in from Exeter more often than not. So on that point, leaders.
Just a brief point on the process of going to Sport England. You say you're going to them in May, you expect to give us some feedback in June. Is there a definite time when we will get an answer to our bid? And if the bid is not successful at this level, do we still continue to revert to the lower level style of status so that funding still continues instead of the project just grind into a halt very quickly in May 2035?
Thank you. Councillor Moore.
Thank you. Thank you for your hard work on this, and the activity has been very obvious and welcomed in the community, and I'm intrigued about the Sport England framework on 8.12, and quite a number of these points do relate to design of the physical environment and planning again. And the last one is particularly around how disadvantaged communities play a leading role in planning and design of large-scale, long-term investment in regeneration and renewal programmes. So that obviously is very significant and relates, it's very pertinent to what's happening in St David's Ward and the City Centre wards because of all the Liveable Exeter programmes that are happening there. In the previous report, we saw, for example, indications that the idea of developing Red Cow isn't a popular one in that area. So obviously next to big transport hubs. So I'm really interested in how we can relate these things together, make them work well together, because if we are looking at systemic change, and obviously your chart shows the policies and the strategies that it relates to, it also needs to relate back to the planning system in terms of connecting up what's there with what can change. And also then it talks about how these disadvantaged communities play a leading role. So how are these groups going to be involved in working with the Liveable Exeter Place Board, which is having a role in the governance of this? I don't see those groups represented in that forum. So how will that happen so that they have a meaningful say at all levels in terms of what's happening in terms of the delivery of this programme? So I wish you success in the bid. Thank you.
Okay, any other members wishing to add something? As I said, I know Councillor would also want to. So if you could just quickly tell us about the funding as regard to the place board and all of that. This is a request about the funding opportunities for that, which will be told about how we deal with it and how we will deal with that in due course, I would say. So about the funding, is it a cliff edge or
yeah,
that sort
it's
of
a
thing?
cliff edge, Chair. So it's and we wanted to be first out the bat. So we're being bold and brave, and we're trying to go to the first board for Sport England, and the project is 100% Sport England funded. So without that funding, there's no other alternatives at the moment.
So all the other points become almost irrelevant. That's why we've got to get this funding in. And well, I do know that, when we first put that bid in, I can remember going up to Taunton that time to try to be one of the 12. And I think we were lucky. And of course, when you talk about 5-6 years ahead, that's forever, isn't it? It's never going to come, is it? And here it is. But I feel sure from what we've seen, are working with Sport England, I think, you'll do a good job in putting it forward, and congratulations to the team. So we've got those 3 recommendations there, which I'm going to put to the meeting now. Can I have a seconder, please? All those in favour?
That's unanimous, Chair. That has been carried.
Okay, thank you very much. Good evening, everybody. It's been a nice meeting, and see you on the, everybody on the 4th of June, one way or the other.